Circular cities and regions are not simply containers of circular practices and businesses. They are very complex socio-economic and environmental systems, in which material inputs and outputs are related and waste is used as a resource. So, how can we envision circular urban projects, cities, or even regions in terms of economy, society, and environment? Well, first, we need a clear picture of what is available. Mapping allows us to observe phenomena that are unnoticeable at the first glance. By redrawing the territory, its landscape structure, its productive landscape, and its material and economic flow movements, we can unveil existing territorial rationalities. In order to do that, we can employ several analytical tools and design frameworks, such as interpretative mapping, social impact analysis, thinking in time and flows, and systemic design to bridge and integrate this complementary perspective and largely disconnected data level. Despite their flat nature, maps can be rather thick. Nevertheless, the overimposition of several layers allows one to correlate different materials, revealing the interrelation and generating a systemic understanding of context. Let's take a look at the case of Port West in Charleroi, Belgium, to understand how mapping works. For this project, we focus on existing and underused renewable resource streams. The most obvious ones were the waste flows for the potential to become the material providers of the future. One waste flow that was identified as quite interesting for Charleroi was biomass from landscape waste. In addition, we mapped underused infrastructural elements such as former railway lines and the Ravel along the River Sambre. Also, with its Steril, this post-industrial site was reclaimed by ruderal vegetation, rendering the landscape as a resource ready to be repurposed. Lastly, geothermal and biomass energy were mapped as static resources. The mapping of these resources was not just a number exercise. A key challenge was understanding how these flows were rooted in space. So, back to envisioning a circular built environment. Circularity demands that we broaden our imagination and explore the possible future of space without necessarily constructing something. In a circular perspective, the designer task should be multidimensional and should begin by rethinking the existing. For this project, the in-depth map operation allowed us to read the industrial ruins of the post-mining landscape of Charleroi, no longer as a waste landscape, but as a land in rest, fallow land. This interpretation is rooted in the agricultural tradition of crop rotation, in which the land is regularly alternated between use, rest, and reused. The agricultural metaphor establishes the critical framework where land is not referred to a static object, but as a space in movement, in which vegetation, buildings, and hard surfaces are transitional manifestations. It also supports the idea that land and urban territories are resources and therefore finite. Furthermore, according to Paola Vigano, territories can be rethought by parts or as a whole. They can be transformed under external action or by themselves, and they are characterized by different life cycles. Hence, by constantly being built and rebuilt, territories are like renewable resources. This view allows the possibility of observing the urban and territorial metabolisms as open agents capable of reconfiguring into new cycles. So, how does all this translate into design? In order to configure a new cycle for the fallow land of Port West, we envisioned three main actions: regenerating, reconnecting, and recirculating. The starting point for rethinking this post-mining territory was its ruderal vegetation, the reclaimed post-industrial sites, and the terril that was generating a different biotope where human and non-human activities meet. In the project, the presence of vegetation was not only recognized as an existing condition, but used as a structural design element to define the new urban configuration. It was also a way to reclaim the polluted soil on site, purify the water, and recycle on site waste streams, generating new productive activities. The key was to design a development strategy for regenerating that gradually activates the landscape as an infrastructure that deals with different challenges and flows at the same time. The reconnecting action led to re-establishing an infrastructural connection with the site, surrounding its ecological landscape and embedded history. Finally, through a recirculating process, we envisioned new circular economies based on the life cycle of wood and the reuse of wood waste and biomass for energy production and soil composting processes. The site could become a hub for new economies and companies related to the wood, energy, and recycling sector. Designing with circularity as an underlying concept implies operationalizing circular principles across time, spatial scales, and flows, and understanding how the landscape profoundly connects and shapes these flows. It's not necessarily the economic potential guiding our design effort in the first place, but the potential of flows and infrastructures to connect different socio-economic agendas. The proposed approach in the European project for Port West in Charleroi synthesizes how multiple circular economy dimensions could merge in space. The proposed design is not a blueprint or a master plan. It instead presents a scenario and a vision for a possible future. Designing with flows requires new methods of collaboration and design, such as mapping, territorial dynamics, systemic design in which waste, including waste spaces, is seen as a resource, designing with existing and local resources, thinking in time and across spatial scales, and thinking about connecting different agendas and how to translate them into space. While the spatial dimension is key, circularity can only be achieved with collaboration where all the actors and spatial components are involved in the process. Circular design projects, visions, and scenarios can act as a medium between politicians, policymakers, designers, investors, communities, and local inhabitants, as well as flora and fauna, in a necessarily open and collaborative dialogue. The value of design in these cases transcends pretty images. Instead, it integrates knowledge and helps shape alternative coalitions.